Not all trains are fast trains. And now, I'm not really talking about the top speed they run at. Today, I'm talking about at which stations a train stops. Because some trains stop at every station along their route, while others skip stations. And that's a good thing. Can you imagine how much time it would take to travel a long distance if your train stopped at every little place along the way? The names of these fast and slow trains depend on where you are. In the United States, for example, trains that stop at every station are generally called local trains, while the trains that skip stations are called express trains. Japan also uses the terms local and express, though there are so many different variations of express trains over there. In Europe, each country has its own names for different service categories. In a lot of countries, the slower trains tend to have some variation of the word regional in their name. Think of the Regionalbahn in Germany or the Transport Express Régional in France. Then there's the fast services that only stop in the major cities. In almost every European country, these services are called Intercity. Let's take a look at the Netherlands specifically. Sure enough, the express trains that only stop at major stations are called Intercity. No surprise there. So then, what are their local trains called? Well, the slowest train service in the Netherlands is called the Sprinter, which sounds a little weird. Sprinting is a fast activity. It's what you do when you're still at the fare gates and you hear your train arrive. So why would they call their slow trains Sprinter? Come in. Hey guys, sorry I'm late. I took the train. Why would you do that? Boss wants us to come up with a new name for the slow trains. What's wrong with the current name? It's called a stopping train because it stops everywhere. Because it's not exciting enough. I want something that grabs people's attention. Something that sounds fast, sexy. Regional Express. I like it. I like where you're going. Unfortunately, the Germans have something like that already. How about you? What about local train? No. Boring and slow. Do not like it. You. Ooh. How about this? The Flash. Okay. Keep this thought process going. It's good. It's not perfect. Guys, I will admit, this is torturous. We still haven't found a new name for our slow trains. I just need this meeting to be over. Hey, boss, the Olympics are on. Do you mind if we watch something? Yeah, please, can we just watch the Olympics? Fine, I guess it's the Olympics. We can watch some TV. Here, where's the remote?
Straight onto the second chain. All three of them safely with a bat in hand round the top end. The Swiss crowd are on their feet here, look for a home victory.
Yes,
right at the very end. One more change to make. The bat's got the lead here. That's better. The Dutch just faltered a little bit, so the Swiss have it, and they're coming away. It's going to be close on the line. They're being chased down by the Dutch team.
She is so fast. She is so good at sprinting. She has to be the best sprinter. Truly the best sprinter. Truly the best sprinter. Best sprinter. It's perfect. Okay, so that's not exactly what happened. The Dutch railways occasionally do make some strange decisions, but the name Sprinter did not just come out of nowhere. As with most topics that we cover on this channel, to find the answer, we have to take a look at some history. NS is the largest passenger rail operator in the Netherlands. Though they are a private company, and always have been, 100% of their shares are owned by the Dutch government. Like in most countries, when the first railways in the Netherlands were built in the 19th century, they were built and operated by various private companies. Some lines were built by the government, but even these were still operated by a corporation. By 1911, several of these prominent railways had agreed to adopt a shared fare structure. The cooperation of these companies continued all the way until 1938, when they all came together to form the Nederlandse Spoorwegen, NS, the Dutch Railways. 1970 rolled around, and that was a big moment for NS. Before that, schedules had been messy. Service was basically determined by the time of day and the demand. Honestly, much like how most commuter railways in the United States still operate. But in 1970, NS introduced schedules that were easy to memorize because they repeated themselves every hour. This is also when trains began to receive that characteristic yellow color that they still wear to this day. Trains began to run in 3 different categories. The stopptrein, literally translated as stopping train, which stopped at every station along the way, as the name suggests. The sneltrein, or fast train, which skipped a few stations. It served more popular stations, but it was not as fast as the fastest and newest category, the Intercity. Intercity trains only stopped at the largest stations, located in the major cities. They also had food on board and were generally just high-quality trains. And that's the way things stayed for a while. But during this time, the population of the country grew and grew. New neighborhoods were being built all the time, and with these new suburban neighborhoods that were popping up, plans to build new railways soon followed. Except there was one problem. On many of these lines, the stations would have to be spaced quite close to each other. The trains that were running on stopping train services back then were not very good at accelerating, so they weren't considered the best option for some of these new lines. So NS began developing a new train, the Stadsgewestelijk Materieel. Don't worry, we'll call it SGM from now. The main feature of the SGM was that it could accelerate fast. This allowed it to reach higher speeds even when the distances between stations were short. The fact that it could sprint such short distances gave it the official nickname Sprinter. They were used on several different lines, but most notably on the Hofplein line between The Hague and Rotterdam, and on the brand new Zoetermeer Stadslijn between The Hague and Zoetermeer, which opened in 1977. Both these lines had frequent stops, so the SGM was an ideal train. Eventually, the SGM began running in other parts of the country as well. From 2003 to 2006, they were given a midlife update. Part of the refurbishment included a brand new paint scheme, a white background, a yellow stripe on the bottom and yellow doors, and blue around the windows. At that point, these trains were no longer needed on the original lines where they had run. See, in 2006, the Hofplein line and Zoetermeer line were converted into Randstadrail, a super cool combination of trams and metros running on the same tracks. I've made videos about this in the past, but that has been several years ago, so I'd be more than happy to make a video about this conversion if people would like that. Let me know. Anyways, now that these shiny new refurbished sprinters were running across the country, NS decided to do a little marketing trick. They maintained the original system of stopptrein, sneltrein, and Intercity, but any stopping trains that were run using these SGM cars would be called Sprinter. So for a while, there were 4 train categories, even though 2 of them were basically the same. In 2009, the second generation of Sprinters was introduced, the Sprinter Light Train, or SLT for short. Several years passed. December of 2011 came along and brought perhaps the biggest change we'd seen since 1970. The stopptrein and sneltrein were eliminated. Instead, trains are now either a Sprinter or an Intercity. All local trains are now called Sprinters. Personally, I can't say that I'm the biggest fan of this move, because it kind of blurred the meaning of a lot of terms. For starters, trains that were not traditionally part of the Sprinter fleet began to be called Sprinters. In some rare instances, trains that are considered part of the Intercity fleet will run on Sprinter services, but that's not really that big of a deal. What I do have an issue with is the downgrading of Intercity service. In a lot of places, especially in the denser areas of the country, it's really just a glorified regional express at this point. Food service ended a long time ago, and Intercities stop at multiple stations within the same city. On some lines, they just run locally, kinda defeating the whole point. Also, at a few stations, some Intercities do stop there while others don't, and you all know that I'm not a fan of that. In reality, with how many stations the Netherlands has, I think that 3 service types would have been more useful. But anyways, since the SLT was introduced, the original SGM has fully retired, and NS has gotten 2 more types of Sprinters. The Flirt, built by Swiss company Stadler, and the Civity, built by CAF in Spain. The Civities have the official nickname of Sprinter New Generation, which what are you gonna call them someday in the future when they're the oldest trains around? I told you, sometimes they make some strange decisions over there at NS. Now there is a 5th generation Sprinter that is coming. We don't know a whole lot of details yet, not even who will be building them, but what we do know is that they will not be wearing that characteristic white Sprinter livery that has set these Sprinters apart for the last 2 decades. See, while currently there is a distinct Intercity fleet and a distinct Sprinter fleet, NS is trying to get rid of that difference. All future trains will be painted in the new NS Flow livery, and all trains will be used for Sprinter and Intercity services interchangeably. I assume that also means that whenever the current Sprinter trains are up for a refurbishment, they'll get the new Flow colors as well. Honestly, I kinda understand this move. Modern trains just accelerate a lot faster than older trains, so acceleration isn't really something that would set one train apart from the other, and having a uniform fleet will let NS be more flexible. Before we end, there's one point I do want to mention. The name Sprinter is pretty much only used by NS. There are several other companies that operate regional trains in the Netherlands, and most of these just use the old terminology of stoptrein or sneltrein. So that's the story behind why the slowest trains in the Netherlands have the fast-sounding name Sprinter. Basically, in the 1970s, they received a fleet of quickly accelerating trains that they called Sprinters, and since these were used on local services, eventually the name spread to all local trains. Thank you so much for watching today. If you like the Dutch railways, or know somebody who does, consider buying any of the special Dutch train products that I've designed myself. We have clothing, mugs, stickers, they're all available on the Trains Are Awesome store. Link in the description. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to Trains Are Awesome, and we'll see you next time.